All right, today we are interviewing Angela Melfi, one of the founders of Threads Worldwide. Hi, Angela. Thank you for
Hi,
joining us today.
thanks for having me, you guys.
So
All right. So Jackie and I are so excited to be working with Threads, which obviously we love. But for our listeners, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and who you are and how you became involved with fair trade?
Yeah, so let's see. My background is in digital marketing. I was in sales for a digital marketing company, and during that time, my two best friends and I, we traveled around the world and went to countries like India and Cambodia and other developing countries. And every time that we were in one of these countries, we always found ourselves at a little coffee shop dreaming about how we would start a business together. And we have lots of funny stories about different business ideas we almost started, and thank goodness we didn't. And then I audited a class through Denver University, which is right down the street from my house. And the class was called Global Social Entrepreneurship. It was a mouthful. And we got to go and visit other social businesses around Colorado. And one of them was Global Girlfriend, and they sell items made by women around the world. And I bought a skirt from them. I bought the founder, her name is Stacey Egger. I bought her book and was reading it. And then all of a sudden this one day, this skirt was sitting on my ground, on my floor, on my room. And it's just one of those bright Congolese skirts with big blue and yellow flowers. And I looked down at it, and all of a sudden I just had this idea. I thought, this is it. We're going to bring in items made by women in developing countries. There's so many women who all they need is access. They have the talent, they have the skills, they have the design. It's gorgeous. We just need to facilitate access to a market. And then my next thought was, and we're going to do it through the kind of model that we use, which is a direct sales model, because of the kind of conversations that could really come out of that kind of model versus like a retail store where people come in and they may or may not know or care about fair trade, and then they buy on price, or online where it's just super competitive. We really intentionally started with this model so that way women like you two could be talking about it and getting impassioned by it and sharing it with people in your community. So that's a little bit about background on me and on Threads Worldwide.
that's cool. I didn't realize, like, from day one, you had just always thought it was going to be a direct sales model.
It was
very intentional.
It was very intentional. It was the second thought that came into my mind about how to do it. Yeah.
And Kara was talking to me recently, and you just mentioned the skirt. You thought that it was going to be clothing first, right?
Yeah. Well, first we thought clothing. I don't really know why, other than I guess that was just the thought that came into my head. And then upon researching clothing, I mean, there's a bunch of reasons, like weight of shipping, having to steam things. I met with a couple of people from other direct sales companies like Cabby. And then there was a woman here who did pop-up fundraisers around town with other clothes. And everyone said what a pain it is to haul things in and out of the car. And right there, I was like, yeah, good point. And then also, jewelry's one size fits all. And really, ultimately, it takes a much higher skill level for the women who we're working with to be able to sew clothes. And it takes power and sewing machines and all of that, which most of the women that we work with are not living in communities or environments that have that. So we would have limited the women that we could really work with too.
Yeah. Wow, very interesting. So what do you think made the three of you so courageous to start this company with such a big mission?
I'll have to tell you, it didn't even feel like courage at the time. It was one of those things that once I got the idea, I couldn't not do it. And I talked with Kara shares her story where she just had a brand newborn, a premature baby. We were on the plane to her sister's wedding where she was maid of honor working on her speech. I mean, it was probably exactly the worst time to say anything to her about it, but I those things that happen and you just can't not take the next step. So that's really where we were coming from. At least I'll speak for myself. And I mean, also the next week I wanted to quit my job. As I said, I was in sales for a digital marketing company, and my parents were really worried. They didn't want me to, and I was like, yeah, but you guys are just parents. Of course you're gonna worry. And then when Lindsay and Kara both got worried, and they said, "Don't do it. The time is not yet. Like, let's build this up a little bit more." I thought, okay, I'll listen to you guys, because you're not coming from this like worry-wart parent perspective. You're my friends, and future business partners. So I was ready to just jump all in, and I'm really glad that they had me wait. I think I talked with Kara in July, and then I left my company in April. So it took a little time. So I don't know if I really answered your question, Jackie, but it didn't feel like courage. It felt like there was no other option at the time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, with the golden rule too, like people are like, well, what made you do that? It's kind of just the same thing, you feel like you have to do it because no one else is. So
yeah, you just, once you learn about it, one of my big, I guess the big impetus for this too was somehow in September 2009, I remember the year, I learned about sex trafficking. And I don't remember exactly how I learned about it, but I remember the rabbit hole of researching and learning about it and reading about it. And it literally kept me up at night. I know that's a phrase, but I would toss and turn thinking about these women in the different situations and how they could get there and how this was possible for humans to do that to each other. I just couldn't fathom. And upon more discovery, I know you two know this as well, but it's really out of poverty that sex trafficking happens, especially abroad. And I thought, well, this is something, like I started volunteering for different organizations that work on trafficking here in Colorado and working with organizations internationally and things like that. And so that's what I was doing in the meantime. But once I realized too that giving women an opportunity to earn an income can alleviate that for themselves and for their future generations, that was another reason that I was like, oh, wow, this fits really perfectly. Because it was a couple years before Threads that I learned about it and didn't know what to do. And then once that sort of all clicked together too, it became very obvious.
Yeah, totally. I think that that's a big disconnect, like that people don't understand how connected it really is.
Yeah.
So, Angela, Jackie and I just love that Threads has family values, and we were wondering if you could share what those are with us and our listeners.
Yes, gosh, I wonder if I can do them off the top of my head. So let me just pull them up so that way. Do you want me to go through and like read them, or?
Whatever you feel called to do, really. Yeah.
So, well, let me first talk about where these came from. So it was probably about, gosh, was it 3 years ago? You were around 3.5 years ago at one of our conferences. We introduced the Threads family values that really we didn't come up with these like aspirational someday get to. These were really family values that we saw that were already arising from the community, from the women who had already come together as fair trade partners at Threads. We saw these things in the community. And now since then, we really use them as guideposts at home office. So when we're trying to make a decision, we ask, okay, which family value does this fulfill? Where is this coming from? And if it doesn't, then the answer is probably no. So to give you a little background on where it came from and how we use them. So our Threads family values, we have 7 of them, and it spells Threads. So the first for T is together we rise. We are better together. We choose collaboration over competition every time. And then H is honor ourselves to honor the world. Global transformation begins with inner transformation. We practice radical self-care as the key to being available and able to change the world. And one of the things that we were seeing is that women pour themselves outside of themselves so often, and we have to really be able to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so we're healthy and grounded and be able to contribute. R is for right now. This is probably my favorite one. The time for action is now. We commit to taking steps towards our collective vision and trusting that our path will appear. We do not wait to be ready. And this is something else that we see so often with women, especially, is that we have to have everything in a line and arranged and ready. And if we can't do something perfectly, sometimes we don't get started at all. And really what I love about this one is, you know, the saying of getting your ducks in a row. I always laugh. I heard this once, that your ducks don't really care about being in a row. So do something anyway, like take an action. If it's something like fear that's stopping you, fear is probably always going to be there, and being more organized is not going to have fear go away. It's like, start right now and trust that your path will appear.
Yeah, totally. I'm reading Rachel Hollis's new book right now, and she was just talking about the exact same thing. There's a Chinese proverb that she brought up, like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Yeah.
And it's so true with everything, you know. She's saying the exact same thing, you know. You're never going to have your ducks in a row. Just go after it. And it's so true. And as women specifically, she mentions that. So it's so funny that you brought it up just like she did.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just start. I love that proverb too. The second best time is now. You can always wish that, I should have gotten started earlier. Well, especially with an organization and a structure like Threads, I mean, we really are ground floor, and waiting is also not in the best interest of anybody who's considering getting started because of what we're building, you know. Hey, I just saw that I was on mute. Could you hear me?
Yeah, it was just for a second. I don't know.
Okay.
What that was.
Okay, good. Do you want me to keep going and read these, or?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
Okay. The next one's E, equal partners. We each play a vital and equal role. Our value is immeasurable and infinite. We could have a long conversation about this, but we had some realizations as well about how we were relating to the partners that we work with around the world, and really getting to know them and making it a priority that we develop relationships with them and celebrate their wins, and just, you know, really know that we're coming alongside their amazing, if I may say, badassness in their communities, that they're really on the ground floor transforming the conversations that are happening in their communities, and like, what's the role that women play, what can girls do, what's possible for girls, and they're the ones doing it, and we're their partners coming alongside to make it happen. They're making it happen, we're making it happen a little bit faster. The next one's A, abundant joy and wonder. I'm sure you two experience this a lot when you're in Bali. We bring curious minds and are open to new experiences and wisdom. We invite limitless joy and deep, deep belly laughs. I love that one. Bring a little lightness. Next one's D, dare to see new possibilities. We dare to dream of a world that works for everyone. We work alongside women, making this a reality. And the last one is safe and nurturing communities. We gather to be inspired, inspiring, and brave. The power of our community lies in every one of us being our truest selves. We celebrate courage, vulnerability, and authenticity over perfection. I can't say how many times a day Kara and I say, authenticity over perfection, when we make some kind of mistake, or who knows what happens. Authenticity over perfection. And one of the things that we've coined around here is embrace the awkward. Like, alongside the do something right now, look, you're not going to sound great the first time that you try something. So just keep trying and embrace the awkward. It's more relatable than having everything polished and perfect.
Yeah. And Kirsten really puts that one forward when teaching all the trainings and everything, and it helps, you know.
Yeah.
You're not going to be perfect the first time, you know. It's not easy.
Yeah. It's humans out there having conversations with humans, and you can't plan for everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like I can see myself in every one of those family values. And sometimes it's a good reminder, especially the right now piece, that, we all have our days when we're like, oh yeah, we'll do it later. And then it's just such a good reminder. No, like the time is now. Absolutely. There's no reason to wait. And so I really love those family values.
And what I love too that we did this season was we have the anchor piece for each of our collections around one of the family values. And one of them, as you know, is the Aora bracelet, which means right now in Spanish, from our partners in Guatemala. And I love when people get that one as a reminder. Nobody buys that and doesn't have some kind of comment like, I need to remind myself to do things right now. And I get a lot. That's probably the one that I get the most pictures of later, of them saying, here's my little reminder for the day. Don't procrastinate, don't wait, it's right now.
Love that.
Yeah.
So Angela, we've been talking a lot about fair trade, and this is, what our whole podcast is centered around. But could you, in your words, what is fair trade, I guess, to you?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked, and that actually this is deepened for me since going through the application process to be part of the Fair Trade Federation. So what I would have said before, I'm just going to share like the contrast, is what I would have said before is getting paid a fair wage on time, which is a very big deal, and it's a big tenet of fair trade. But what I've really gotten from the application process was how much deeper it is. It's really a philosophy of how to work with people around the world. So there's 9 tenets of fair trade. I won't go into all of them, but really it's a way of commerce that includes not only the fair wage, paid on time, which is a big deal again, but also healthy working conditions, making sure there's no child labor, making sure that the artisans or the workers, in the case of fair trade all across the board, really have a voice. One of the questions that we were asked in the application process is what happens when the workers disagree with management and with leadership? What's the process? And I didn't know before that. And so we really got to go in and discover that with our partners about what is the process that if they start to feel unsafe or start to feel like something's not in the best interest of their families. So it's really that kind of holistic approach to the thing that gives them their way of life, which is, their work through the artisan groups.
Right. Thank you.
Another thing, if I can just say one more thing about it too, is I know I'm going outside of your question about how I would define it, but one of the things that I loved and really learned through the application process as well is, fair trade is, it's more like comprehensive than what we have here in the United States. Here we have a minimum wage that's set by the state or the government level or the federal level, and it's the minimum, like that's how much you're going to get paid. And if you need to go get a job at Burger King or McDonald's and that's the minimum wage, that's how much you're getting paid. Take it or leave it. You have to take it or leave it, right? Even if it doesn't work for your family. What I learned through this process is how much goes into calculating the wage, looking at their entire family. So how much food do you need? What are your transportation needs? What are your medical needs? Like really looking at, is this a livable wage for you and your family and what you need? And that's how things get priced and how they get paid. So I just love that, like knowing that what we're paying is sustaining them. It's not just like their government standards, which in a lot of developing countries is way below what's a livable wage.
Wow, that's amazing. So through the application process, can you dive into just a little bit like what organization you were applying to and what the process was like?
Yeah, it's called the Fair Trade Federation. So there's 2 main bodies, the Fair Trade Federation, and then on a global level, it's called World Fair Trade Organization. There are some other ones that I don't know a lot about, but are a little bit more controversial, like a Fair Trade, I think it's called Fair Trade USA, that people have varying opinions on. But the application for the Fair Trade Federation, we always had our eye on it, because we knew we wanted to be a part of it, but it's a very big project. And so it always kept getting put on the back burner, literally for 6 years. You know, we would have a document open, we'd answer a question, and then we'd put it away, and then we'd have to refresh it by the time we came back to it. So in the last year, in 2018, we got really serious about it, and we started, and we went through the whole application process, and finally we turned it in. It was November 6th, 2018, we turned it in, and a couple weeks later, actually, maybe it was a little bit before that, because on November 6th, they told us that we didn't get accepted. And, you know, lots of emotions, terror, embarrassment, maybe terror is a bit of a drama, but, you know, just like, oh my gosh, how could we, who's been founded on the very premise of fair trade, not be accepted into the organization that is the most credible? And so we went, they were really helpful, really great, telling us, you know, where we were missing holes in our application. And what I came to realize is, honestly, where I was coming from in applying was like, hey, I'm a good person. I know these people who work with these fair trade groups. They're great people. Trust us. I mean, when I really look back on it, that's what I was saying. And also, like, in the back of my mind is, why would anybody go into fair trade and not be fair trade? Like, it's not like we're trying to get rich and be scuzzy by using fair trade. Like, that's just nobody would do that. And so I realized, okay, that's one of my personality traits. It's just like, I'm just pretty trusting, and like, things are going to work out. Well, that is not the standard by which they accept people into the Fair Trade Federation. Thank goodness. They have higher standards and measurements than just trust me. So we had 30 days, and I mean, probably it was 20, 25 hour a week work that I did over that 4-week period to get all of the information that we needed, because we had to go back, and I mean, it was getting a lot deeper in with our artisan partners. We created an application process for current and future partners to complete. It's on our website at the bottom if you want to look through it. But just really diving into and learning so much more about, like I've shared already, fair trade, but also our partners and how they work. And then we were accepted. We got accepted at the very end of December. The call came in, and I saw Fair Trade Federation, and I thought, they emailed me last time, so this time, since they're calling, it's probably a good sign. And I got to talk to Ann Ferguson over there, and she accepted us. So it was really, really a very great learning process that I'm really proud of.
Yeah, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
So what is the difference for you? Like, why were you pushing for that membership instead of just working directly with artisans?
Yeah, well, I mean, we are still working directly with artisans, but this provides a level of credibility, I think, that makes it simpler to talk with people about, especially when our model is women like the two of you, you know, selling to your networks, whether it's your friends, your family, or colleagues, or people that you know through different groups of people. We want you to be confident knowing that we're certified, you know, like it's not really called certification, but we're accepted into an organization that also knows that what we're doing is in the best interest of the artisans. So it's like credibility and confidence for you and people like you, other fair trade partners, and then also the customers, so that way they know, okay, what I'm buying really is making that kind of difference that we claim. So I think that was really probably the number one thing, is to be able to say, look, other people have checked us out and we're legit.
Yeah, 100%. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So thanks for putting in all that work, Angela.
Yeah, it was a great learning process.
That's awesome. So that said, what is your big vision for Threads Worldwide?
Yeah. We want to be a huge direct sales company. When I say that, I'm talking like, don't compare. When I say this, this is like aspirational. It's not like real, right? But we want to be like, I always say we want to be like the Stella Dot, but fair trade. Like a huge direct sales company, lots of people around the country earning a living through Threads, and earning, and then making sure though that the people who are our partners in other countries, that their lives are improving as well. One of the reasons, I mean, people have opinions about Stella Dot either, if you know it or don't, but people have opinions about how they run. And what I really want is that the women who come on board with Threads, that everyone is successful. I think when you get to the size of like a Stella Dot, they do these campaigns and people go and they buy the launch kit and then they never do a single thing again. We really want to have a smaller field that everyone is successful. And so that's why we've been spending a lot of time this year on our training programs, on our Jumpstart, which is the first 60 days when people get started, on our mentoring, our leadership, and we're doing it somewhat slowly and very methodically. So that way when people come on, because you're referring, this is all referral business, it's all word of mouth. And we want the people who are on our team to know when they go and talk with somebody about the business that they're going to be successful. So we're really developing entrepreneurs, not just in Guatemala and India, but also here in the US. And so that's like the big vision of, I don't know the number, but that when you come around Threads, you get an amazing community and you know yourself as somebody who can be successful at this.
Awesome, thanks. Do you actually just mind maybe sharing really briefly about, for our listeners who don't know what direct sales is or is not really super familiar with it, and how, I guess, a little bit about being a fair trade partner, or the different roles that you can play, maybe an ambassador versus a fair trade partner, just real quick so our listeners get a better feel for that.
Yeah, so direct sales model, gosh, I don't know what the official definition is, but I think of it as it's word of mouth marketing. So women come on to our team, they start their own small business, whether they think of it as a small business at the time, it really is a small business where they are then selling the jewelry and telling the stories of our artisan partners to their network. And then we have a really great training, because a lot of people get worried about that. I don't want to sell to my friends. We have a really great training process that gets people out of their network right away. So if you're listening to this and wondering if this could be for you, we promise that it's not built around you just selling to your friends and family all the time. It's really not. So, but you get out and then you're selling to people and you're getting, again, word of mouth referrals to host what we call showcases. So these are in-home, mostly. They take place in other places, but mostly in-home parties. And, it's a place where what we think about, and this is where the magic happens, is this is where people get to gather their friends and their families and their neighbors and have a conversation about fair trade and what difference it makes where we're spending our money. And this is what we're talking about earlier in the program about, this is why we didn't want to do retail or online. We want it to be a conversation. We want people walking away thinking, oh, that's what that fair trade symbol means. That's why these bananas are more expensive than these bananas, but that's worth it because I know that the workers here are being taken care of and they're in healthy conditions and things like that, and just really spur that kind of conversation. So that's what happens at showcases. And then the people who host the showcases, like hostesses, we call them ambassadors. And we call them ambassadors because they really are ambassadors for our mission. And they're the key pivotal role to bring these communities together. Without ambassadors, we're talking to each other. With ambassadors, we get to actually share and talk with other people.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Do you think that covered it? Did I talk? Oh, fair trade partners are like the two of you, the women who've decided to start their small business with Threads. Yeah.
Perfect. I know that we spoke about this before, but it's kind of a big question that we get at showcases. And if you can maybe talk a little bit more about how the artisans are getting paid and if that changes from country to country and, how that works a little bit.
Yeah. So the number one question that I get, and probably you as well, is what percentage are the artisans paid? And I think that's a natural question, especially for Americans to ask because of, I think it stems probably from Tom's Shoes and the whole one-to-one model. People love it now. Oh, I buy this and somebody else gets this over here. Whether it's shoes or I know Dell even did it with computers, with soccer balls, with school supplies, all of that. And again, I don't think we want to get into that here in this podcast, but people, including myself, have a pretty strong opinion about that model.
Yeah.
So the question, what percentage do the artisans get paid? It's not based on a percentage. It's based on the living condition, for the living wages requirement for, like I described earlier, their families, their community, things like that. So we pay 50% up front. This is part of fair trade principles as well. We pay the artisans 50% up front, and then we pay 50% upon delivery. So really, we're taking the risk. It's not based on a percentage, because if we don't sell it, we've already paid them. And one of the big reasons that that's a big deal is the 50% up front is because in traditional manufacturing, it's net 90 days, even sometimes longer. And the artisans that we work with, they're small businesses as well. They don't have credit like we do here. They have to pay in cash for the raw materials. So we pay them up front so they can go and get the actual materials, like our partners in Bali who you just met. They have to go and buy the raw silver before they can make it. Well, if they don't have the money or the credit to buy the raw silver, then their only other option is to work in a factory. So we pay 50% up front, 50% upon delivery. And then, like I was describing earlier, it is different by country because living conditions are different by country, and what's required, what's needed, and things like that. And so we have those kind of conversations with our partners when we're pricing out the product. And, there are times where they come back and it's based on the design and the skill level and how long it's going to take them, it doesn't work. We can't include that product. So, I mean, they are the ones who name the price based on those conditions. And then we talk about it, see if there are modifications we can make to make it work. And if not, then we work on a different product with them.
Yeah. And that's how it should be, right? Like, this is how much it takes to make this product. This is how much skill it's needed. That makes total sense, but that's just not the model of everything else.
Yeah, it's not. And I came from my days back as a salesperson in digital marketing. When people would try to negotiate with me, I would negotiate, but I would make sure I wasn't just bringing the cost down. Like, I would say, okay, yeah, we can adjust this, but we're removing this part of the service. And that's totally what we expect from our partners. If we say we can't do that price, what adjustments can you make to reduce the materials or to reduce the amount of time that it's going to take? So that way we're not just asking for a discount, which I think is probably a more traditional retail way of like just try to chip away based on volume and things like that. That's not the conversations that we have.
Yeah, it's such a different conversation. I love that. Thank you for speaking on that.
Yeah.
So Angela, we know that you recently changed your kind of your mindset on how many countries you wanted to be working with, and just can you kind of go into that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So when we first started Threads, we had no idea what we were doing, and we thought it would be really cool and something that we could promote to say that we were, like, quote unquote, in a new country. And so with each collection, we'd roll out a new country. Like, we're now working with Brazil, we're now working in Nepal. And then we started to realize, and just as we learned and grew more as a company, that, buying one pair of earrings from Nepal or one pair of earrings from Brazil is not making a difference for anybody. And so what we did in 2017 is we had an unofficial motto for the year called narrow to expand. And so we really had to narrow down the partners that we were working with. And some of the conversations and decisions were really hard for us. I think they were harder for us than our partners, because the partners were like, oh, you're not going to buy that one pair of earrings again? Oh, well, I don't know. But, they were all very graceful about it. And so we had conversations with them about, like, hey, we're really narrowing, we're focusing down. And when we get bigger, I do have intentions of us expanding, but not yet. So we narrowed it down to 9 countries, and just a little teaser, we're probably going to get down to 8, and then that's where we'll stop. And the intention there is that we're really deepening those relationships. We're moving the needle for them, so that way they're having to go back and hire more people because of our work. And that's what we want to happen before we start to bring on new cooperatives. And so, you know, we've looked at the cooperatives that we're working with, and we've told them this. We want to make sure that their skill set and what they have available for their designs is deep enough that we can continue to go back and work with them on new designs. And so that's one of the main things that we look for now as well. Again, we're not looking for new partners, but when we do, we're going to make sure we can go really deep with them instead of just buying one or two things.
Thanks, Angela. I love that narrow to expand. I think we could all probably use that in our own lives as well.
Yeah. Somebody, I don't remember who it was, I think it was Michelle Hurd, you know, VP of Operations. She said something about, like, you know, water, there's maybe a saying somewhere, but water, you know, when it's it could just flow and spread out evenly, but it's when it gets pressured in that it actually starts to have a force. And so that's what we're doing, is like, okay, we need to push this in and, like, be the Niagara Falls, you know, like, push everything in so we can really have that impact.
Love it.
Yeah, I love that. Can you tell us what those 9 countries are for our audience?
Okay, let's see. You guys help me too. India, Ecuador, Guatemala, Kenya, Vietnam. Gosh, you guys, let me see. What are they? Bolivia, 6, and
Did we say Bali yet?
Bali.
Hello, that's 7. Okay, now of course, on the spot. Can you edit this part out?
Sure.
Embrace the awkward. Let me just go around the world. Ethiopia, that's 8. Oh, and Kenya. There we go.
I think we said Kenya.
Did we?
Did we say India?
I said India. That was the first one. Yep. India, Guatemala, Ecuador, Vietnam.
We have the paper beads from Uganda, right?
Uganda. That's it. There we go.
Okay.
3 people.
Together we rise.
Like 27 countries, what it took.
We were wondering what your favorite artisan story to share is.
Yeah. My favorite is Santos in Guatemala. And Santos, she grew up in a place called Sunana, which is around Lake Atitlan. And Lake Atitlan is really a touristy area, but Sunana is not. I mean, they don't even have power. And she got married when she was 14, 15. And by the time we met her, had 3 kids. And she was about 19, 20. And this cooperative started, and their model is to have one leader who then works with, and she's like the lead for the other women who are making the bracelets. So she's responsible for training on design, quality control, transporting the products back and forth, things like that. And that was Santos. But what we learned was that Santos, she was the 5th leader in this community who tried to be the leader of this cooperative. And the first 4 were actually, they faced domestic violence, and so didn't become the leaders. And so Santos went to her husband, and in a culture like Guatemala, you very much have to ask for permission. And she asked her husband if she could be the leader of this cooperative, and he said no. And so she went back to him however much time later and asked again, and he said no. And sometime later, she went back again a 3rd time to ask, and he said no. And she said, more or less, I don't know how she said it because she speaks Quechua, but something like, okay, well, when our kids need medicine, I need it that day. And when they need shoes, I need money for shoes that day. And he realized that he couldn't provide that and said, okay. And again, I don't know what the conversation was, but that's also very courageous of him. Because in an environment like that, culturally, it's not okay for women to do things out of the house. I mean, she has to be out later at night. She travels back and forth to Guatemala City. Like, these are really big deals in the community. So I also want to give him credit. So anyway, she becomes the leader of this group. And one of the first things that they do is they write out or draw a picture of their dream, what it is that they want, like what's the calling them to do this. And her dream was to build a home. So before, she lived in a room, something small, probably about the size of this room, and dirt floors. You know, in Guatemala it rains a lot, turns to mud. She was cooking over a campfire, as most women do, which, you know, if you think about how you are at the end of a camping trip, how you smell and how you feel, you know, that's how they cooked and lived, and actually contributed to a lot of health problems for their kids because there was just smoke in their lungs. And so when we first visited her, it was the day that she got a smokeless stove put into her home. So now, instead of cooking over a campfire, she could stand up and cook tortillas, and the smoke was going out. One of the first things that we did was we helped paint the walls to like trap the soot in, and the temperature dropped probably 15 degrees in the couple hours that it took us to paint this room. It was crazy how hot it was in there just because of the soot on the walls. So it dropped the temperature. Now she could stand up and cook. And they got solar light bulbs that day, a water filter that day. So all these like improvements around the home, right, are a big deal. But also, the coolest thing I think was that was when we first met her, probably about 4 years ago. When we last went back in for our last trip, she was like commanding the room. So the first time that we were there, you know, it's intimidating. 10 people walk in, they're staring at you. English is not your first language. You're getting translated from Quechua to Spanish to English. And so she was nervous, rightly so. And this last time when we went and met her, I mean, she just looked people in the eyes. She was shushing some of the women who were talking. And it just like to see her transformation and her power. That was one of those things that I never thought of when we started Threads. For me, it was always about the income, the money that they were going to make, and women stewarding money and how that was going to improve the lives in the communities. And that's happening for sure. But it's also like the dignity and the pride that these women have and the value that they have within their relationships with their husbands and in the community and their families. That's even more exciting. So that's the story I always love to tell about Santos, and you know, she's one of many that we get to work with.
Thanks for sharing. I love that story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how alike we are in so many ways, despite, you know, being from different places and different circumstances. But I mean, we all, you know, have the same struggles and wants, or maybe not the same exact struggles, but you know what I'm trying to say.
The same dreams and desires. Yeah. That's something else that when we first started, my only mission was the women in developing countries. Like I was like, come on, like we're all here for that. And I've started to realize and just fall in love with what you're talking about, Jen, like the things that the women here, like you two and other fair trade partners, get out of this. Like, you know, the courage to leave a bad relationship, or the courage to speak up for something in their house, or, you know, the courage to leave a job that's not fulfilling. Like all of those things have happened and inside this community. And I think most women come to our community because they want to make a difference for women around the world. And I love it. And it's admirable. And that's where we started. But I think that people stay because of what they get from the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, like, how has this work, you know, within the fair trade world and within Threads, how has it changed your daily habits?
That's a good question.
Well, thank you.
My daily habits. How has it changed my daily habits? So I am a mom of a 2.5-year-old and I'm pregnant. I'm going to deliver any second. And I think what it's really done is I'm so passionate about both of those things. And I really am working on being present in both. So I'm not perfect at it, but it's really like focusing on wherever I am to have my attention there and having that become, I wouldn't call it a habit yet, but a practice that I'm working on getting to be a habit, where I can be fully in my work when I'm in my work, and I can be fully with my daughter when I'm with my daughter. And that sometimes those two overlap. Like, she's downstairs right now with her dad, and you know, I'm going to go down and get to hang out with her a little bit before I go into the office. And you know, it's also something that I love too, is the worlds can collide. Like, that's one of the nice things, is that it is really flexible. And I think showing that from home office, from, you know, Kara and me as founders, that like we integrate our lives really well. Like, Kenna comes with me to showcases, and it's like, hey, yeah, I didn't have anybody to watch her tonight, so she's here, and that can work for you as well as a fair trade partner. I think it's relatable and attractive. And I don't think I'm answering your question, but that's how it's changed my like work day to day, I would say. And I just love it. I mean, I love everything that I do. I can work on Threads 24 hours a day. I just love it. No matter what it is that I'm doing, I love it. And so like the getting myself to work is not the hard part. It's really, I guess, like making sure that I'm focusing on what's the most important, and then also turning it off so I can really be with Kenna.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just curious as to how Kenna's gonna, just how she's gonna grow up, and you know, when she's a teenager, and she's gonna know so much about fair trade just by default, and the conversation she's going to have, and you know, maybe by, you know, that time, although it's not too far in the future. Sorry to scare you, but that, you know, fair trade will be more of a conversation than it is now.
Yeah, and you know, that's what I love too, is like the women that we're working with, they're transforming the conversation for what it is to be a girl in their communities. Like, for here, we take for granted that girls are going to go to school, but that's not how it works in Guatemala. Right. And so now the girls go to school, and then their neighbors see their girls go to school, and then they send their girls to school. And like, now it's going to become a conversation. It's just going to become like this natural thing. Of course girls go to school. And then here, we don't have to worry about our girls going to school, but there's the other things like you're talking about with fair trade, or where you're spending your money, or who made your clothes. I mean, it's Fashion Revolution Week. I don't know when this will get published, but right now it's Fashion Revolution Week, and people are really starting to have that conversation and thinking about it. And I know my friends shop differently because of me, you know, and I know that my, you know, Kenna for sure will have different things. My mother-in-law shops differently because of me, you know, and that's what Fair Trade Partners, that's one of the opportunities of Fair Trade Partners, is to be able to have that in their communities. And I really, like, I said this since the beginning when we started Threads, is I want one day, okay, I'm going to say it this way. I want one day Threads to go out of business, or us to have to drastically change our business model, because everyone's like, duh, of course fair trade, or fair trade isn't even a thing. Like, what if, sort of like how food companies have to label their food as non-GMO, like the onus is on the companies who are doing good to prove that they're doing good, to show non-GMO. I think that's backwards. It should be like, GMO, you know, does contain GMO. It's sort of like that in the fair trade realm of, what if you bought something and it said, oh, this is made with, you know, 50% slave labor? How would that change your shopping? Like, I want it to become more the norm that fair trade is available and less slave labor. So that way it has to be labeled that way. I think that would change shopping right away. I sure hope so. I have faith it would change shopping. And so that's where I want us to get to. And hopefully it is by the time that Kenna's old enough that this is it's just like a standard. Of course, I'm not going to buy that because I know who made that.
Yeah, that's so true. That reminds me of, you know, when we're traveling abroad and you see cigarette boxes and the labels say smoking kills. And then when we were in Bali, they actually showed pictures of what cancer looks like.
Yes.
And imagine if, you know, they showed some, you know, something graphic.
Yeah.
Of what really is going on.
Yes.
I think we'd really think twice about buying that shirt.
You hope so.
We would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think it's going to come to that. But but this is kind of a good segue into, maybe could you share a little bit about what strategies you use to shop more ethically these days?
Yeah, I mean, 100% of what I buy is either fair trade or secondhand. I can say that unequivocally. And it started probably 3 years ago, maybe, I'm going to guess 3 years ago. And I mean, I'd say it's very easy for me in that I can't not, being a founder and CEO of a fair trade company, it would be very hypocritical to then be like, well, my jewelry is, but no, my clothes are from China. So this is a secondhand shirt. This is obviously a threads necklace. And that's how I shop for Kenna as well. Actually, I don't shop for Kenna. Everything is handed down. Luckily, I have, friends who are older and or have kids that are older and they've handed down. So we have really great secondhand stores in Denver, just right down the street from me even. And then I also shop online at like ThredUp. I know a lot of people love Poshmark. I haven't ever used, I just haven't, but I heard that that's a great one as well. And I think I don't know if it's just me and my curated Instagram feed or the curated conversations that I have, but I feel like there's more companies coming out talking about doing secondhand and being able to, you guys, Jackie, you might know more being in this biz, but it seems like it's becoming more and more popular, which I'm so grateful for. And the more options that there are, the more people are going to do it. You're not like scrounging through dirty bins of stuff at a secondhand store anymore. I mean, some of the things that they sell down the street at the store near me, I can't afford. I mean, it's like $300 secondhand purses of these brands I've never even heard of. I'm like, whoa. And then they have normal stuff too. But like it's not just scraps anymore. It's really nice stuff. And ThredUp, I love it. They put together outfits for you, which I need. And I mean, it's getting really sophisticated.
Yeah, there is, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but there's a really cool, like a thrift store that you buy with points that I found through Fair Trade Fashion Show. So they did a pop-up, and they do pop-ups. I'll have to find the name for you guys, but that's, you like donate your clothes and you get points based on like the quality and the brand.
Is it online?
It's online, yeah, but they do.
Is it Silk Road?
What?
Silk Road?
No, maybe there's another one, but it's like Second something.
Okay.
Swap Society.
Second
I
Swap.
think it's Swap Society.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really cool. They and you get really cool easy points. Like, yeah, it's awesome. So I love that there's a lot of different options, and like you aren't stuck by just going to your local thrift store anymore that that may not have the best stuff. There's a lot of really cool options. So I love that.
Yep. Yeah. And I probably buy secondhand more than I buy fair trade in terms of clothes, but I know there's great ones out there. Like you've been showing, Jackie, Elegant Tees and Mata Traders and, Packed Organic. They're right down the street in Boulder from us. I have a lot of stuff from Packed actually, but.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love Packed Organic.
Love it.
Love it. It's a great products and company. So, I mean, I know you've kind of mentioned this quite a bit, but what do you think is really possible with this fair trade movement?
I think it's really possible that it becomes the standard and that everything gets elevated for people and that they're no longer buying the 3-pack of t-shirts for $3, that they're actually thinking about where it's coming from. And look, I know that too. I haven't dove into this as much as I probably will in, the upcoming however long in my life, but I might look back on this podcast interview and think how naive that is. But, I also know that there's considerations of money and how much, money people can put towards it. And sometimes it's not because they're trying to get the cheapest options, but that's what they could really afford. And it's that or food, and so I get it, but I think that there's a way when it becomes more popular and more of the standard that we're going to just see more options. I mean, retailers are very smart. And if we, people who can afford it right now, this is how I think about organic food as well. If we can start buying it, it makes it more popular, and it makes it then more affordable, because it's like the new standard, and they can get economies of scale, you know, while still treating their workers well. And again, I'm not an expert on that at all, but that is what I see as possible. And like, let's make it affordable for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's coming together. Even just like in the last couple years, like the amounts of new products and, you know, things that are becoming the norm, it's coming together, and it's really, really cool to watch.
It is. We're putting together a gift guide for graduates, and it'll come out in the next couple of weeks. And I just Googled, you know, fair trade sheets, fair trade. I don't remember what I was thinking about. What do kids need when they're going off to college? Fair trade that. And I mean, I found most of it. It was really, really cool that that's starting.
I love that. Yeah. It's interesting. Kind of jumping around a little bit. Sorry, but we were wondering what your biggest struggle has been with starting Threads Worldwide.
And that we thought it would take off on its own, and that the biggest concern we were going to have would be inventory. We thought it's women working with women, and the mission is so great. And personally, I love our jewelry. I mean, we always buy jewelry that we would wear regardless of the story. Like, we wanted to make sure we loved it. That it would just take off, just naturally just happen. And what we have learned is that, yes, people come and they're attracted by the mission. But if you're not, you know, if you're not successful in the business, it's disheartening, or there's other places that people can spend their time. And so I don't even know how many years it took us to create our training program. Probably 2 or 3 years. You know, we used to just send jewelry to people and be like, let us know, you know, how it goes. And we've gotten so much better in our training program, and that's where we're going to keep focusing, because again, we want women to come here and be successful and know themselves as successful. And you know, we're all going to have these like places where we're stopped, like we call it the lid, but to just have women have the opportunity to keep taking that lid off, and then they'll discover a new lid that's something that's stopping them. But that was probably the hardest challenge, was like really getting to, hey, you can have a great idea and you can have a great mission, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work right away.
Yeah. I don't know if you listen to Dean Graziosi, but he talks about, you know, people think like build it and they will come, but that's not really the case. You know, you can build something beautiful, but you have to do some other stuff first to make it work.
You do, and depending on your business model, it might be marketing. I mean, you can have a beautiful idea, but if nobody knows about it, you know, exactly. With us, it's more like our marketing is through word of mouth, and so it's like training people to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, such a good point.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And also on the flip side, what's been your biggest reward?
Okay, I really am being real about this. Michelle and I heard, and you can check our text. We were just talking about this before I started this podcast. But she said to me, okay, I'm going to tell you what she said, actually, because it has to do with you guys, so I don't want you to think I'm just blowing smoke, okay? So she said, I said something about how I'm going to be late coming into the office. And I said, because I'm being interviewed on Jackie and Jen's new podcast that they're creating together. And then she wrote, OMG, and in case you forget to, you should be so proud of all the opportunities that your vision has spawned for others. So cool. And I said, thanks, Michelle. I had the same thought. So excited about what is coming out of this community. So it was like, this is the perfect example. It's the thing I love the most is what we get to experience together as a community, and the women that get to come together through our business. Like, again, people come for the mission, but they don't know what they're saying yes to. And the women that they get to meet, the smart women and the new opportunities, and like, you know, like Christine's starting her travel organization. And, you know, I don't know if that was because of Threads, but like she got something from Threads and being around this community and what you guys are starting together. And just, I mean, obviously I want people to come and be a part of Threads and stay with Threads, but also like what we as women who are like consciously on the same path, what we get to do together. That's my number one favorite thing. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. How cool is that?
I know. How cool is that? Like, you guys are together because of this. You're starting a podcast.
Yeah, we wouldn't have known each other. We wouldn't have, been part of that community. So
yeah. So that's my favorite. Yeah.
I feel like I've made so many amazing connections and friendships through the work that we're doing, and I feel like I've known Jackie forever, and I don't know why. I just feel like I do. And when we went to Bali together, we were like, we really haven't spent much time together. Like, this is really getting to know each other.
Yeah. Like, you see each other once a week for, 30, 45 minutes. And
right. Virtually. Yeah, we were literally on the opposite sides of the country, but I feel like we're really connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The community is by far my favorite part of Threads. I mean, just so many amazing women, and getting to know each other on the trip to Bali was amazing. We would ask each other questions. Like, I remember I asked Jen at the very beginning of the trip, what are you looking forward to most, and who are you looking forward to getting to know the most? And she said me. I was like, oh, okay.
I wasn't just saying that, Jackie.
That's good, because
but look at what came out of it.
Yeah, totally. It's so cool. And it's so many amazing women that were there, and getting to know each other on a deeper level was unbelievable. So thank you for providing that for us.
Yeah, and Jackie, I have to say, hands down 5-star review for Jimmy. Everyone loved him. Everyone was like, he needs to come on the next trip to Guatemala. We need to make sure that happens. They just loved his energy. And like Kara kept saying, so open and curious, and just like up for anything, which that's just so neat. Like, I heard that all the guests were really great additions on the trip.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And I wasn't even there for one of the dinners, and he stands up, and Kara's like, okay, Jimmy, so you're going to give a speech, right? And he was like, I didn't know that she was joking. And she like made him stand up and give him a speech. But I think he just basically was like really grateful for being there and everything. So that was really cool.
So
we just have a couple more questions, and we'll wrap it up. But if you could tell the people listening one crucial way to be more ethical, what would it be?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is buy secondhand first for clothes. At least start there, and start looking at the food that you're buying. I think those are 2 easy ways. Look for fair trade on the food that you're buying. Of course, add in some jewelry, but I don't know that that's going to move the needle for people right away. Those would be the 2 things I'd say.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to, your babies, your kids, as they're growing up, how are you going to talk to them about, being more ethical and shopping with more intention and that kind of stuff?
Well, I've actually had that worry of, how kids rebel. I'm like, oh my gosh, Kenna's going to be like a Walmart junkie or something like that, So I'm like, how do I do this in a way that's still cool and she still, likes what she's wearing or whatever? But I think that the conversation is going to be actually pretty easy, because she's already been to Ecuador with me. I plan on taking her to trips, to visit the artisans in the future. Same with my son. So I don't imagine it having to be something like a sit down, like, okay, think about it this way. I think it's just going to be ingrained in them. But I also am really aware of the social pressures that we have of, back in the day, what do we all want? Guest jeans or whatever. So it's like, okay, how do I make this in a way that this is their choice and that they're excited about it as well? It's not something that their weirdo mom is pushing on them. So I don't have an answer for that, but I plan on just having them around the conversation all the time. I mean, a lot of times I'm testing jewelry with Kenna. She's a part of our quality control, in that, if I have it on, she's pulling on it and ripping on it and things like that. And if it makes it through her, it's gonna make it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think just, leading by example will be, a big factor in how they make decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that's, true with, how we raise children in general. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but from what I've seen, it's definitely leading by example.
They're watching.
So I wouldn't worry.
Okay.
It'll be a fair trade pair of jeans that she'll be wanting, and then everyone else will want it. She'll be setting the trends.
I hope so. I sure hope so. I know that thrift stores are a bit trendy right now too. I just hope that stays. She doesn't become this like shopaholic brand person and buying $300 pairs of whatever shoes and bags.
Well, Madewell does have fair trade jeans now, so.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So we're getting there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being our first interview on the podcast. We were thrilled to learn more about Threads Worldwide, your story, and to spread the message of fair trade and for you to be our first interview. So thank you
for having me. I really was so honored. Like I said, I'm just love that this podcast is happening, first of all. And I was so honored to be your first guest. So thank you. And, we'll be looking back and laughing when you have millions of followers about how it was when you started this. Don't forget about me, okay? Remember.
We won't forget the little people.
Yeah, don't forget the little people.
I'm sure we'll be circling back to Threads and many times throughout the podcast and highlighting different aspects of what we're up to and what you're up to. So
good, please do.
Yeah,
we're available anytime for conversations or updates.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, I love you both. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye.